after 6, so pretty quick.
All right, well, since we now have a quorum, we'll call the meeting to order. This is the July 21st Environmental Action Committee meeting. I'll start out with introductions. I'm Sarah Marsh. I represent the citizens of Ward 1 on the City Council and chair of the group.
I'm Peter Niergarten, the staff representative to the group and the city's director of sustainability and resilience.
Connie Crisp, citizen of Fayetteville.
Angela Wisely, citizen at large.
Garnet Wise, I'm the industrial rep.
Rob Moore, citizen at large.
Richard Russell, citizen at large, Ward 1.
Joanna Public, citizen at large, Ward 2.
And since we have quite a few people in the audience, if you'd introduce yourselves as well, please.
Andrew Garner, City Planning Director.
Chris Brown, City Engineer.
Phil Penny, Environmental Scientist, also President of the ORC.
Steve Schneider, International Mountain Bike Association Regional Director.
Sarah Reed, Staff Stormwater Engineer.
Hunter Haynes, Consultant Development.
All right, thank you. Okay, moving on, or actually let's start with the approval of meeting agenda. Did anyone have any items that they needed to add to our agenda this evening?
Well, we had talked about the botanical garden proposal that's going to go before the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Is it on August the 4th, I think? Is that whatever their next meeting on that Monday?
Yep, August 4th at 5:30 in room 111.
So we had, several of us had traded some emails about taking a look at that to make sure, you know, it seems like something within our scope. So I guess I want to make sure that's on our agenda to discuss.
Okay, so that meeting is August the 4th at 5:30 in room 111.
Yeah.
And then the plan is for as many of us to attend that as we can, and then at our next meeting have a discussion about that.
Yeah, I think probably so. Since we haven't been formally briefed, you know, I think that's our opportunity to get as much information as possible. And I think we have some people here that would like to kind of help brief us in preparation for that, since we haven't received anything at this point from the BGO. And I guess they're not obligated to share it with us, but we wanted to make sure that, I think that's within our scope to review.
Okay, so we'll be adding that to our agenda for next month. Okay, anything else? Well, then we'll accept the agenda as published. Starting with old business. We're going to review the updates to the Drainage Criteria Manual and UDC Amendment Chapter 156 variances. Who has this? Sarah?
I do, and Chris will help me too. Okay, this is the staff memo that is gone or will be going out to City Council. It's 2 pages. Bit of a PowerPoint, just kind of get the lights.
Yep. Better?
Yeah. Okay, so the engineering division reviews, does technical review for new development, for all development projects. And we've been operating off of a drainage manual since 1995. And, you know, since that time there's been new computer methods, and a lot of the, you know, a lot of what was presented in the old manual was obsolete. It had a lot of graphs and things that you would use if you were designing without a computer. But so I'm going to basically want to present to you guys about what is in the new drainage manual. Some of it will be the same as what was in the old one, such as the methods for estimating runoff quantities of stormwater, design for inlets, storm drainage, culverts, bridges, detaining stormwater in, for storms that are larger than a 2-year storm. Let's see. And that portion, detaining the stormwater for over a 2-year storm has been successful for what it was trying to do, which is protect, downstream areas from a really big storm. Because we have seen, when in a really heavy storm that areas that have been developed like since the 90s and have a detention pond, the detention ponds are tending to work. One of the things that the manual doesn't address, which was one of our goals for the new manual, was to help protect properties from the smaller storms. So anything basically under a 2-year storm, to try to reduce the downstream impacts that they're seeing from those. And also guys here. And the existing manual didn't have anything about low impact development, so we wanted to add that. And basically the way that we shaped these goals into the new manual is we came up with these, along with our consultant, we came up with these minimum standards. Number 1 being water quality, 2 being channel protection, and then 3 overbank flood protection, and 4 being extreme flood protection. So we go from water quality to channel protection is looking at small storms, and then we're looking at the bigger storms. Okay, and I don't mind if you guys ask me questions while we go through, if anything comes up. Okay, so minimum standard number 1 for water quality. The goal behind this one is to be in compliance with ADEQ's, the city's stormwater permit with ADEQ. So their goal is that we remove 80% of total suspended solids from flows that exceed pre-development flows where practicable. So it's not a real tight regulation, but that's the way it's presented to us. So we have 2 methods of ways that goal can be met. The first one is called the TSS reduction method, and with that you would design your site to treat the first 1.2 inches for reduced TSS, and below that on my slide is a couple of ways that a designer might use to meet that goal, and then each of those has design guidance all spelled out in the appendices in the manual. The second way a site could meet the water quality goal is to use low impact development and capture, to use low impact development methods to capture an inch of rainfall on the newly developed area. And so there's a list of what kind of low impact development elements we give detailed design guidance for, and the manual also details how you can use a potential reduction in runoff volume that is achieved from the LID, and then translate that into reduced pipe sizes, a potential reduced pond size. And so basically factor in the benefit that your site has that the low impact elements have given you as far as the incremental removal of your larger flood risk.
So I have a question.
Uh-huh.
On the capturing 1 inch or 1.2 inches, is that based on the 2-year storm, or where is that number coming from?
It's something like 80% of rainfalls that you get or maybe 90%. Okay, let's say most rainfalls that you get all year are an inch or less.
Okay.
And they contain or transport most of the pollutants. And so that's where that number comes from.
Okay, so that's average rainfall.
I don't know if you could call it average, but it's most rainfalls are an inch or less. And so you're
Those are probably all
treating
smaller
it.
than a 2-year storm.
yeah, a 2-year storm is about 3.5 inches.
Okay.
That's to get
These
the
are the,
first
these are
flush.
the really frequent
Yeah, so it's a
rainfalls.
first flush
Yeah.
kind of philosophy. Let's see. Do you want to add anything else on LID? And then I'll move to the other minimum
Well,
standards.
like Sarah said, this is LID is not required on the site. This water quality standard right now in the ADEQ guidance says we're practicable, so we try to figure out what that means. So ultimately, this current minimum standard number 1 is not a requirement. It is a goal. But we have seen some of the consultants that have used this manual before. We've allowed them to use it, just to kind of try it out and use it on their site. And so we have seen most everyone who's used the new manual has used some sort of LID because it does end up providing a benefit to them in terms of the runoff calculations for their pipe and pond sizes. So while this is not a requirement, it is something that we do expect will be used in some form or fashion and will happen on every site. At some point, this water quality standard here will go from a we're practicable to a you will do this. Once that happens, then it's a very easy switch to turn on in our manual to say this is a goal to this is a requirement. So we're prepared to do that, and we're going to basically train the consultants and developers that this is what we need to see, and then once it becomes a requirement, it won't be quite so painful for them to meet this standard.
Okay, so on the 1 and 2, are those options, are these 2 separate compliance paths, or do you have to do both 1 and 2?
No, it's 2 separate ways that you could achieve the water quality minimum standard.
Yeah, and it's really, the runoff reduction is the LID. You're capturing it, you're keeping that 1 inch. Or if you just let the water go, then you actually have to set up some sort of filtration system for the 1.2 inches.
Okay.
So it's, whether it's sand filters, I mean, there are lots of different filtration things that they can have. So you either keep it on site or you clean it up before you let it go off site.
So the 6-inch rains that we've had several times in the last decade aren't going to be captured, aren't going to be required to be captured on site?
Well, not under minimum standard 1. I mean, as we go through the minimum standards, there are like number 3 and 4 will explain, how a 6-inch rain is handled, but it will be similar to how it's handled now in a detention pond.
Richard?
Just a semantical question. In item 1, would it be fair to say that what you're saying here is provide this treatment resulting from a rainfall depth of at least 1.2 inches, or that's the meaning of that?
1.2 inches or less.
Yeah, up to 1.2 inches.
Yeah, I mean, in reality,
Is that clear?
that would be true, that it would be 1.2
It wasn't really
inches
clear
or
to me
less.
from what it says. I mean, that's a precise point.
Right. That's
Doesn't
the
describe a
design
range.
target, and then it would work for every rain that's 1.2 inches or less. I mean, all of the design is always kind of a theoretical. The storm will be this many inches, so that's the design target.
Does this apply to like individual lots, or is this for developments, subdivisions and things, or what
It's
is this for?
Any development that requires a drainage permit, and that's most developments. It doesn't include single-family residential. In the ordinance, there's a few things that are accepted are exempted, like an addition of 2,000 square feet on a commercial building. We've left those the same as they've been in the past. Does that pretty much cover? So basically, new development is what this is going to apply to.
And so this is completely separate than like the state stormwater permits, the construction 1 acre and above.
Uh-huh.
So this has nothing to do with that specifically. This is-
Right.
Okay.
I mean, they do kind of have some things to do with each other, but yeah, that is a separate permit for the site.
And does the city actually do permits, or is this part of the code review process, or where does this come in?
We issue a drainage permit, a grading and drainage permit.
Okay.
Do they have to demonstrate one of those two requirements to get one going forward? Is that going to be?
Right, so they will submit a drainage permit to the city for review. This will be one of the, checkpoints that they'll present, how they're going to achieve this. There may be reasons why somebody would say that it's not practicable. I'm not sure what that is, but.
Okay. So you're still within ADEQ's law of it's either
Right.
practicable. I mean, there's always a way for them to get an exception. This isn't a mandate saying
They would
everyone
need
has to.
to
Okay.
spell out, why they think that would be, and then the city would have to agree with it. Okay. Okay, so with this graphic, I'm going to try to explain minimum standards 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so minimum standard 1, like we talked about, if they were doing LID, then it would probably be treated on site and that water wouldn't go into the pond. But there are some methods where the water would go into the pond. So what the blue on the bottom is showing is that the designer may have put some water quality volume in the pond. So that blue could be in the pond or out of the pond. And that's kind of a way that shows you how the LID might be useful. It would, if that blue were taken out and everything was shifted down, your pond wouldn't be quite as deep. Okay, so the green, the channel protection, is it's going to be the increased volume that results from the 1-year storm. So the 1-year storm is 3.5 inches. I think earlier we were talking about the 2-year storm. The 2-year storm is over 4 inches. So this will be the increased volume for a 24-hour, 3.5-inch storm. And it is going to be held for at least 40 hours and discharged slowly. So that's going to be a big difference in our ponds. What we're used to seeing now is a storm 4 inches or less, say, would flow into the pond and basically flow back out of the pond and not really have residence time. And that's what people notice downstream of having higher flows more frequently and channel scour, downstream erosion. So this is the goal of this is to prevent those things from happening and to have a low flow out of the pond for a smaller storm. So now that will take up some space in the bottom of the pond, and our goal is to not increase the size requirement of the detention pond. So,
And the reason you're saying before or currently that you wouldn't see that detention in the pond is because the current stormwater requirements are that you only detain storms to a 2-year storm and larger, and not deal with the 2-year and smaller.
right,
correct?
the way it's currently set up, it's like the pond is designed for checkpoints. Make sure that the 2-year storm's peak outflow is not higher post-development than it was pre-development. So you make that checkpoint, and you also do it for the 2, 5, 10, 25, 50, 100. So you check all those. So there's no check on the storms lower than a 2-year storm.
So they would just
Go
right through.
flow
I
through
think
in
the
general.
graphic, if you look at the graphic, you can see the kind of the outfall pipe there, the relatively large
Mhm.
pipe.
Yeah.
And then some smaller pipe systems that will basically, that's the depiction of smaller orifices that will help contain the water in the pond.
Right.
Over a period of time. So picture just taking that larger pipe and punching it all
Just
the way through
continuing
into
it.
the pond. That's what our current ordinance allows, that larger pipe, so that up to the 2-year storm, that water just passes right through the pond. We get no attention out of it. And like Sarah said, that's what we get the most complaints about. People say, I'm getting more water, and we say, well, we're mitigating the 2-year flow and bug, so you're really not getting any more water. But from a practical standpoint, they are getting more water, and there's no doubt about it. So this channel protection volume and this new method of detaining for the 40 hours is going to help that tremendously. It's really going to cut down, I think, on the complaints of more water. Now, one thing that is going to do, rather than these storms that flow through and you flow through, you see a very high flow for a short period of time, it's going to be moved out over 40 hours. So you're going to see a couple of days that the water is flowing past your property, where now it just blows through and then it's done. So that's something we'll have to watch carefully. The complaints may go from I'm getting way too much water to I'm getting water flowing across my yard and past my house for 2 days. What's going on? So something that we'll have to pay attention to. There may be some things we have to work on.
But it'll be less water.
It'll be less
Yes.
water for a longer period
For
of
a
time.
longer period of time. Okay.
Right. Say maybe out of a 3-inch diameter opening versus maybe a 24-inch diameter opening.
Because it's the same volume, the same amount of water.
Gotcha.
We just hold it and
You're
it
gonna
takes
hold-
longer to get out of there. There's really
Right.
not a lot we can do about the volume of the water for these larger storms. The 1-inch that we talked about detaining on site, keeping on site with LID, is really about the best we can do. And then the ground is saturated and there's just no way to handle the rest of it. It has to flow off. So this is a method to kind of hold it back, let it release it more slowly, so we don't have these erosion problems and large flood issues in the smaller storms.
So then, so you have a 25-year event. A portion, or kind of the first portion of your event is going to be encompassed down here in your water quality, and then in your channel protection, the volume that flows into the pond with that bigger storm that is above those will be in this red zone, kind of filling the pond up to, say, this at a maximum. But this will have, a larger orifice to where all we do is check the peak flow to not exceed pre-development for the post-development flow, and let it flow out at that. It'll just flow out of here at that rate, and be more of a like a flood risk protection, like an over the flow that would come out of the banks of the ditch downstream or the creek downstream, what have you. And then kind of the same concept for the 100-year storm. It's going to potentially at a max fill up to here, after it fills the whole pond up, and then flow out. And then one thing that we did to try to make sure we're not really increasing these pond sizes is we eliminated the freeboard, which would have been an additional foot, which theoretically never sees water. So what we're trying to do is really use the pond on a regular basis to hold some water, but then also allow this, really large floods to have the kind of control that they need for those flood risks.
Is there any kind of a mechanism required to be able to stop the outflow in one of these ponds? If we did have this 100-year flood and we needed all these ponds to actually hold on to the water for a little while, could we stop that? Or are they?
Well, I think that there's always the risk that, okay, we have the 100-year flood, and your pond quickly draws down to this level, the green level, and then it's draining slowly. But there's always the risk that the next day you have that 100-year flood again. So I think for that reason, you would always leave that open so that it could do the detention it's designed for and then draw back down and have some capacity once again. I think that's kind of what we saw like in April of 2011 was needing the full pond capacity and then shortly after needing it again.
Okay.
Yeah, and what the goal of these larger storms is really just to not make it any worse after the development than it was before. When we get these larger events, everybody's flooded, everybody expects to have water everywhere, and we just have to make sure that they didn't flood the last time it rained this much. They did flood this time because of the development. That's what we want to avoid. We want to make sure those peak flows don't increase beyond the development flow. We don't, obviously we get a lot of complaints when we have a huge storm, but really like Sarah said, the complaints we got back in 2011 were in the downtown area, in the older parts of town where we don't have the detention ordinance. The west side of town, really, we didn't see any problems because those detention ponds were working the way they were intended to mitigate those larger storms. So once you get in those big storms, we just want to make sure it's not worse.
And that's the end of what I wanted to go over with you guys in the slides. So now I'm just open to discussion. Now there's ordinance revisions that go along with adopting the manual because it's the ordinance that references the manual and formally adopts it. And then there were some things like erosion and sediment control that we've transferred into the manual, and we've left some portions in the code in the UDC, but kind of transitioning it out to use the manual. And then in the low impact development chapter, we kept the concepts and the overall idea and big picture items, but some of the technical things we took out and then directed the user to reference the Chapter 5 of the drainage manual, so we can try to keep all of our technical criteria in the same place. And I think that that'll work better for us in the future as far as when things need to be updated.
Can you go back a slide? So where does rainwater harvesting fall in this, if you wanted to capture the rainwater for irrigation?
That could potentially be low impact development, be a part of your design. I don't know that we would allow it to be incorporated in the larger drainage plan if it was for residences. It might be, it would need to be somewhere where we could have some assurance that it would be in practice and continuing in practice. It's kind of iffy on that. Like, it could be just left full and then not draw down. But it falls into low impact development.
But it's not anywhere on here.
Yeah, I think it's. We did talk about that. It is a low impact development concept, but because it fills up, it's intended to stay full until whoever uses the water. We can't use it as a calculation to reduce the runoff from the site, because once it gets full, if it's full the next rain, there's no benefit. So it's not really included in here as a calculation. And like we said before, each of these items has a calculation method where the developer can go in and say, okay, I'm going to build an infiltration trench here, and I'm going to build it this way, and I'm going to build it this big, and so that's going to reduce my runoff by this amount. So when I go over here and I design my pipe sizes, I'm going to be able to reduce the pipe size because of this reduced runoff. And that's what these are all intended to do. They have a method of calculating how much runoff you're reducing over in your traditional design. Well, we haven't had that before. We had the low impact development chapter, and it had a whole bunch of things in there. But essentially, the designer, the developer, benefit for many of those from doing them. They couldn't save money because they couldn't reduce their runoff using these calculation methods. And so, if they did them, it's just because they wanted to be good stewards, not because it saved them money. And developers, better or worse, respond a lot more to saving money than being good stewards. Not that there are not some good stewards who are developers out there, but I think you understand that. If there's
Yeah.
an incentive to save money, we're much more likely to get these being used. So these are all the ones that factor in the calculation and actually reduce the amount of water going into the main drainage system.
Angela?
Maybe a bigger picture of maybe what Sarah was getting at. For the low impact development, these listed, I'm wondering if they are exclusive or if perhaps some new innovative technology is developed that's able to be documented in a manner that shows the calculations. Would they be appropriate and considered
Yes,
for review?
That's a great question, and the answer is yes. These are the ones we specifically have calculations for, but the manual is flexible enough that as new technologies come out, new things come in, and we can see the calculations and we agree with them, and we'll have to go through that process of review. But absolutely, if there are other things not shown on this list and they can show the calculations, how it works, then it can be used the very same way.
Garnet?
Yeah, I just was curious, what's downspout disconnection?
Well, you could have your downspout directly connected to, where you could have your downspout piped
Straight to the storm.
under your yard, directly into the storm drain, and never see it and
Okay.
shoot it straight into the
As
storm
opposed to
drain.
putting it in a
As
grassy swale or
opposed
something
to
like that.
having a green area planned that's going to be the first holder of the downspout water, and then it would run off from there.
I got you. Okay, thanks.
Did you say this was going to be suggested and then it would end up being mandatory? Is that
Well,
how
what
to understand that?
Okay, what the ADEQ permit, what our permit says is you have to reduce your total suspended solids, basically the dirt in the water, has to be reduced by 80% where practicable. And so the where practicable is kind of the out that the developers use. They say, well, we just couldn't do it. And that's basically allowable by the permit. And so we're trying to maintain that same level of regulation to match the permit, not to go beyond that. We've seen these folks who've used this kind of on a trial basis for various things. Been successful sometimes not. It really depends on the site, how much existing impervious area is, how big it is, and there are a lot of factors. So we've seen it work sometimes, seen it partially work, and then other times it doesn't. So that's really the way we're approaching this. It's a more practical sort of thing. So they will have to prove that it's not practical.
So that'll be the teeth, is they have to, you have to tell you.
They have to do the calculation and say we did it or we couldn't do it, and you're fine. Yeah.
Is this basically the city complying with your MS4 requirements with the state? Is that what, is this to help the city comply? Is that the gist of it? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think we're really, with this drainage criteria manual, we're complying better with this requirement than any of the other cities around that I'm aware of. I think it's a much further step in that direction than most other cities. So, and a lot of this standard is part of the ADEQ permit, but a lot of the reason for the new manual is just to allow some of the new methods, new computer programs that are out there. In '95, it was all done by hand, and we've got that many charts that nobody ever looks at anymore. So just to get rid of some of that, so it's some of that, and the good old engineering designing pipe size hasn't changed and probably never will. So some of that stuff hasn't changed. Some of it is similar, just you have different ways of calculating, or different tools to calculate those things.
So this graphic that we're looking at here, is this actually from the new manual, just the 1-2 box? Because I think it's confusing that it's not clear that it's an either-or situation. It looks like you have to do 1 and 2, and so that might be.
That's a portion of a larger table.
Okay.
And then it also has some text to go with it. And so hopefully the manual's clear that it's a. I think when you add the text, I would certainly hope it'd be clear.
And there's an or in there.
There's a one.
After the.
The red
Yeah,
line
I
is
see
over
that.
it.
Okay. It's just hidden, missed it.
Yeah, I didn't see it at first either.
Hey, Peter, didn't you put the FTP site with the entire manual and all the appendices and everything? So if y'all are interested in reading the manual, I printed it out for the city clerk, and it was about that thick. So there's a lot of information there, but it's all there. I think was it chapter 2? Kind of goes through the minimum standards. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
good
And chapter
chapter.
2's not too long.
Yeah, if you're going to pick one to read, you can kind of read through what all the requirements are, how this is all set up.
Okay.
And then we made a flow chart to kind of a decision tree flow chart to try to help the new users to go through without feeling like they're hopefully without feeling like they're totally lost in our manual. To go through each of the minimum standards with their detention design.
How long do you project it would be before the council would take the step of requiring this, every development, and requiring and changing some ordinances to allow people to get a big piece of property rezoned, split it into lots, sell it, and then none of these rules apply to those individual lots? We've got red dirt filling old, totally pervious lots where the water soaked in traditionally, and there's no way that you can tell them it's practical for them to retain any water on that lot. This is an important step, and I think just making it's been an option in the background here for a few years already. Does anybody predict that you have to give them a few years to adjust, or 6 weeks, or what?
Yeah, well, my recommendation to the council is to follow what the ADQ guidance says and not go beyond that. And I think that's important, because if you go beyond the ADQ guidance and you require something that's far beyond that, then you are creating cost situations, cost issues that other cities are not requiring. So that's our recommendation, is that let's follow the guidance of ADQ. As their rules change, we can respond to those rules. I believe, again, that we've gone far beyond what most other cities in the area are requiring or looking at. I think that this water quality chapter, I think we've gone beyond that. So, but we don't want to go beyond what the permit says, what ADQ says. When that will be, that changes to something more specific, more stringent. The permit it's a 5-year permit. I think
Yeah, 4 or 5, however long they make it.
so I think it was redone in 2012.
We're just entering a new one, but
Okay.
our new one is essentially the same as our old one, which was a 4 or 5 year permit.
So, they haven't addressed it with this permit cycle, so we'll see what happens as we go
But
down.
if AD
And the other thing that you mentioned, the single-family homes are exempted from the requirements of detention and the drainage permit requirement. So that's something that's just exempted in our ordinance.
Well, that,
Although
But a developer that develops a subdivision of single-family homes
Subdivision.
is required to meet the
So
requirements.
it's theoretically captured in that, so.
Is there,
we're a progressive city, and ADQ, the ADEQ is a political entity that is totally bombarded by exceptions and exemptions and political things that keep them from making stronger rules. There's nothing to keep a city from doing more to prevent flooding, as well as the other goals of this, but
Okay.
flooding's big.
This does meet LEED standards, which is a pretty high standard, the 80% total suspended solids. So this recommendation is actually pretty good, I think.
But we're talking about the solids, we're barely hinting at the actual washing away of houses and this piped water leaving these places and eroding the streams wherever it comes out again. And, you know, even 10 years, 20 years ago, people were talking about no piping any water. Have it soak in. If you can't build it so that it will soak in most of that water. A tank like this, I mean, if it's got a hard bottom, no water soaking into the groundwater. And we see it along the streets when streets and highways are put in. There's hard-packed material between the sidewalk and the street. And then there's a little bit of soil, and you can grow some vegetation. But ironically, you have to water that vegetation because it doesn't give the roots of perennials access to groundwater. So mow it all the time and water it so it'll be ready to mow in a week. I mean, that's what we see all over our city. And every little piece of property, you know, water should flow off the road into a low place where it can soak in. And what we are talking about always is drainage. The word drainage is outmoded in this kind of thing. It's about how to get the water to stay as close to where it falls as possible and keep a healthy situation that way.
yeah, I just have one more quick question. I hope it's quick. Do you guys monitor certain areas? Is that part of your permit now? I mean, have we already made progress as far as TSS, or do we know? I mean, we've had the drainage
this,
permits for a while now. Do we know?
this,
Yeah, like,
this requirement in, you know, per ADQ, it is basically like use methods that have been shown to cause those reductions, but it does not ask, like, say, sampling at
Okay.
at
I didn't
the
know
point where
if that
water
was-
leaves the site. And I think that the EPA has discussed that.
yeah.
And
Well, I'm not pushing for sampling at individual sites. I just wondered, does the city have to sample specific points, and have we made any progress, or is that not part of your permit, the MS4 permit?
sampling on, I think that in the future, we will be doing some water quality sampling on the West Fork or contributors to the West Fork, because the West Fork is on the 303D list for sediment, to basically show, you know, what the city's contribution is.
Yeah. But right now, we're not required, so we don't have any data yet, not as far as
Is there
historic
sampling
data.
on any of the USGS gauges?
We don't have water quality sampling right
Okay,
now.
that's
We only have stream flow
Okay.
sampling.
All right, any other questions, comments?
This is on the next city
August
council
5th?
agenda, is that correct?
August 5th? Yeah.
Yep.
So, would anyone like to endorse this proposal?
I like it.
Is that a motion?
Do we need a motion for the Farm Election Committee to support the, how do I word it?
I would say recommend approval to city council.
Thank you.
All right.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Well, barring a complete jump forward by about, what, maybe 20 years or something, I don't know what it'll be out of my lifetime, I'll vote for it. So,
All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Would we like to recommend to the council that they also make this mandatory? Is that appropriate this time?
I'll make a motion that we ask them to make it mandatory to start off as we take it up the first time. And at least they'll have that discussion of whether to do that. And they'll have to admit that, it would be the best thing. And
It wouldn't hurt for them to have the discussion. I don't know if there's, I know the state has, like a rule, if they are more stringent than the EPA, when they, then they have to show cost benefits. I don't know if the city has any kind of requirements like that or not, but it might be worthy of discussion at least. You don't want to create something, force it to get so expensive that you impact development and jobs and things like that. 'Cause this is like, it sounds like this is already a big step forward, even without the, enforcement kind of arm of it. Which, I mean, that would be a whole different discussion anyway. How would you enforce it if it was mandatory? I think already we've got the staff's geared up to handle this, but yeah, if you made it mandatory, that opens up a whole nother can of worms. But it might be worth discussing.
One,
with the city.
it's mandatory with the exception of them showing that there is an exemption for them, right? I mean, they're going to have to individually say, what was the word that was used? It wasn't exemption, it was...
That it's not
Costs.
practicable.
Yeah, exactly, it's not practicable, but they have to actually explicitly define that to be able to not do those, correct?
Right.
So they have to stand up
They
and
can use
say...
a method to decrease suspended solids or to infiltrate on site, one or the other.
Right.
So everybody's going to have to go
Yeah,
through
so it
this
comes up no matter what.
process.
Okay,
That part is mandatory.
yeah.
Yeah. So.
And you're
yeah.
not, you gotta be really careful saying, we're gonna take out an ADEQ exemption. At least on the trash side of things, we couldn't do that as government for ADEQ. We can't tell ADEQ like, oh no, we're gonna take out your exemptions, because then that one case is gonna come up.
Yeah, the city
And-
attorney might shoot that down
Yeah,
right
exactly.
away anyway,
And
but it might be worth discussing. But
What are your thoughts, Angela? See,
I think the mandatory component requires a good bit of discussion I wouldn't want to say, let's vote for something to be mandatory and let the city council figure out that conversation, unless we're willing to do the research on the ramifications. I wouldn't be comfortable voting for it. I'm open to the discussion, but without extensive discussion on what that might mean.
that might slow this whole thing down substantially if
Well,
it gets sent
we've
back for-
approved what we were here to discuss today.
Right.
To
I
add
mean,
making it mandatory, I think it's going to be a very involved process if we're going to do it properly.
Yeah, making it mandatory might slow this.
Yes, if we make that.
Trying to do better might slow down the good. Is that? I don't know if I'm phrasing it right, but I don't think we want to stop this. I think this is great. We've already voted on that. So yeah, we want to be careful not to hamstring this and keep
There
it from
are
moving
other
forward.
ways to look into a mandatory component in the future. The door is not closed forever on that conversation.
I wonder if a good avenue for the Environmental Action Committee might be thinking about different ways of helping to promote the low-impact component of the ordinance as the option of choice for folks, because I think it has proven to do a better job and actually maybe even more cost-effectively in terms of sediment reduction. Maybe that's a good role for the Environmental Action Committee is think about some future projects that could help promote the LID component.
I like that
Kind of
too.
a carrot approach.
Because then we might be able to work in some more dealings with the public, like you were talking about the rainwater catchment and the rain ponds, that kind of thing, and just making that more feasible and people taking that up, promoting those.
One entity that has done a good job of promoting rain barrels and rain gardens is the Cooperative Extension. So I don't know if you guys have kind of interfaced with them much, but as far as like a level that a individual person can implement on their lot without a lot of expense, they've worked a lot in that area of it.
All right, so then it might just say if there's not a second for Aubrey's motion, and we're going to work instead on promotion, encouragement. Is that fair? Okay. All right, if there's nothing further, then we'll move on. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. All right, next on our agenda, in keeping with our goals to review projects for redevelopment that are in our Enduring Green Network, we have a proposed ordinance rezoning it's approximately 253 acres located along Cato Springs Road adjacent to our new regional park. Right now, it's a residential plan zoning district, otherwise known as South Pass, and the developer is seeking to rezone it into 3 separate parcels: urban thoroughfare, community services, and neighborhood conservation, and these are our form-based codes. And so, Peter, do you want to?
Andrew Garner's
Okay.
going to present this to you guys.
And so I'm not sure what background the committee has on this property, so I'll give you guys a quick background on where we're at on the overall rezoning and how we came to this point, and then I'll describe what the proposal is as far as the rezoning districts, and then open it up for questions. I do have some slides in here too showing the Enduring Green Network, some of the watershed issues I'll go over as well. Just as background, the project, you can see the property here. You probably noticed it when you're driving into Fayetteville from the south. It's on the west side of I-49, right before you get to the first exit off of Razorback Road. So I have it pulled up here in Google Earth as well. So you're coming in here. Here's Razorback Road exit, and here's Kessler Mountain. The site here is about 630 acres that's now owned by the city in this green. And this yellow here is about 253 acres owned by Chambers Bank. The overall project for regional park started probably over 10 years ago with the previous administration. Started looking at needs for parks and became aware that we really needed more parks facilities. We needed a regional park. And so that's how this plan started coming together. And the city partnered with some investors on a project called South Pass. And in 2006, I think it was even recognized on our future land use plan map as this is when we're recognizing this area as a future city center, including a park area. And then in 2008, the South Pass project was approved, and that was a rezoning of the entire property, including plans for the park and the South Pass project. And after that time, the land for the regional park was deeded to the city, so the city received that 200-something odd acres for a park, which is kind of in this portion of the property. And the South Pass project never happened, and the property was since went back to ownership from the bank, from Chambers Bank. And then you guys are aware that the city recently bought Kessler Mountain Reserve, which has added all this other land here into a reserve. And there are no immediate plans that I'm aware of for Chambers Bank to develop this property, but as part of the whole process, we're getting the zoning in place, or working with them to get zoning in place consistent with the future land use plan map, which is still anticipating this area would develop. We're under plans right now. We're designing the park and anticipating that project will start this year. So the rezoning proposed is to rezone all of the city property, which is this green here, to P1 institutional, which that's our typical zoning for parks. And these yellow zoning districts here, I have the abbreviations here, are what is being proposed for the Chambers Bank property. You can see here this UT is urban thoroughfare, CS is community services at these 2 points, and the neighborhood conservation back at this point. Just kind of going through some images of the property, and I'll let other people speak that may know more about some of the environmental benefits of this area, but my understanding is it's a pretty typical Ozark property. There's hardwood forest primarily along these ridge lines. This is disturbed agricultural grasslands down here. been used for farming and so forth over the years. This is our Enduring Green Network map, which encompasses a huge portion of this area. Going to this next slide, it's kind of busy, but this is just basically the streams and the floodplains from a really large overview. And you can see just basically where the property is draining. Here you can see this property here, this ridge line here is kind of the top of the watershed. The drainages from this point are generally going to east to the West Fork of the White River, and drainage from this side of the ridge is going west down into the Illinois River watershed. And I'll have a few slides here showing more of the streams on the property. So where these red lines are, this is stream side protection zone. This is where streams are starting to be protected. And under our ordinance, that's when a stream drains 100 acres or more, that's when it starts to be protected. And so that's what you're seeing here. There are some protected streams on the property. And there is a very minimal amount of floodplain, which is right down here near the entrance of the property. And I'll zoom in a little bit closer here. You can see there's a little floodplain that comes up here off of Cato Springs Branch. And again, there are some streams that are under our stream side protection ordinance.
While you're on that shot, can you show where's the old landfill that the DEQ's covering or whatever?
Landfill is kind of in this area where these, being remediated. In this area, I believe, if you drive by there, you can actually see them remediated at this point right now. And this is just a close-up property of the being proposed for the rezoning for Chambers Bank. And again, you can kind of see where the floodplain comes up in this area.
Where's our new trailhead at on there, Andrew?
I am not sure. I believe it's coming in off of Judge Cummings Road, but
It's back to the right. Keep going, Sarah. Right there.
Right here.
Yeah, it's right in there. Right in there. Yeah. Sorry.
Thanks.
okay, no, great. Yeah, I don't know. Didn't know exactly. Then the other slide I have up here, this is really busy, but this is just the proposed uses, or the uses under the zoning that would be allowed. Neighborhood conservation, which is that small pocket, kind of the northwest, is single family only. CS Community Services is more of a neighborhood scale form-based zoning district, allows a mix of uses. And Urban Thoroughfare as well is also a form-based zoning district. It's a mixed-use zoning district. You can see, you can pretty much do from single-family to multifamily uses and a variety of commercial and mixed uses as well in both of these districts. The primary difference between community services and urban thoroughfare is that urban thoroughfare does allow for some larger scale buildings. On community services, if you're doing a commercial or mixed-use building, they have to be under a certain amount of square feet. I believe it's about 25,000 square feet. So like a neighborhood market size and smaller. Urban thoroughfare would allow for larger mixed-use buildings and single-use buildings as well.
So where would the neighborhood market thing fall in the community services?
So community services, I'll pull back up this slide 1 here. So this community services is well back off of Cato Springs Road.
Mm-hmm.
This is where, I just threw that out there. There's not a planned neighborhood market or anything that I'm aware of. That's just an example. But
now, is it all zoned now the way it was when it was going to be South Pass for residential, or did it ever get zoned that way?
The South Pass was this is really following what the South Pass zoning was for this portion of the property. The South Pass project anticipated almost another downtown area in this area. And so that's kind of what these zoning districts would allow for, a new downtown type scale massing, connectivity in the streets in these areas.
Those Chambers requested this as the property owner?
It is, and Mr. Haynes is here for Chambers Bank. I don't know if you want to add anything, Hunter? Or?
You want to come up and talk to us?
Yeah, absolutely. That's when we first started looking at the overall transaction with the city and adjusting a multi-use trail easement and accessing the property. One of the things we were looking at was the complexity of the PZD zoning and how could we overall simplify what was happening out there and envision how this could be in the future, understanding that the South Pass development was no more. The overall developable acreage had shrunk down, but keeping the mindset of, this is an area that's very near and dear to everyone in Fayetteville. The city stepped forward and purchased and expanded their overall holdings. So we went in and looked at the PZD, looked at the type of use units that were allowed in this varying area, and then that's I'm a developer by trade, and I do consulting for the bank, and they said, okay, well, what would you do? I said, oh, well, if it were me, I'm going to use the natural features of the land to really start delineating my different uses. The area between the UT and the CS, that's utilizing the multi-use trail easement along with the creek that runs down through there. You've got another slide, a little bit further along.
Okay.
But that's...
Do you want Google Earth or anything? Or?
No, keep rolling.
Okay.
We got another one that shows the more. There you go. So that's what we tried to do, and this is how I like to develop. It's what I found to be the most beneficial, and really what people and citizens respond to. It's how people want to live their lives. So utilizing that front portion for urban thoroughfare, where you're going to have some of your more commercial type applications, and dealing with Chamber of Commerce, dealing with everybody. Some of the things that have been brought to attention is being able to have some type of lodging facility out there that is able to address the needs of the regional park and sports complex, and then overall just the city of Fayetteville, having that would be your first lodging facility coming into the city. So urban thoroughfare came to mind. And then we've been working to, and we'll actually be coming through and looking at amending the master street plan, taking Shiloh and sweeping a little bit, having a roundabout. Can I play this?
Yeah, go for it.
Sensitive. Having Shiloh extension, Shiloh Road in the future, it's shown on the master street plan to extend down through this area to provide access. And then how is that oriented? In the previous development, it was coming down through here, coming in, and then just hanging at 90 down through there. I'm not a huge fan of 90 degrees. I do love roundabouts, contrary to some other people's, what they might like. I love them. But having some type of roundabout feature here where I'm able to come in off of Cato Springs Road, have this be my central point, accessing back over to my regional park and sports complex, crossing over into this area, and coming up along this road right here, thus accessing my community services and this knoll right here. This property line, the way I chose that, and I went and walk all of this. I don't just tell somebody what to do. I go out there with the surveyors and figure it out. This is the top of what is a small ridge right here. Got approximately 60 feet of fall from this point to this point. So to me, that's a natural area that I would want to break into and then have this in my neighborhood conservation. If I were to live in a home, this is where I'd want to live. I don't want to live up here. I want to live here. I want to be tucked in. This is the same reason everyone loves this and wants to protect us, the same reason I would want to live there and be able to have the benefit of that. So those are just some of the ideals and the thought process that go into these types of things as we're looking at doing things. I'm happy to answer any questions or.
What are the two round?
Those are your water towers.
Okay.
Yeah. There's 600 or 700 feet of fall from here down to here.
Okay. So, and not to try to pin you down or anything, but like in the urban thoroughfare would be where you would have hotels that would help support the fall tournaments and all this other stuff that's going to go on at the park, and grocery stores, shopping centers, whatever, to support that. So the neighborhood conservation would be single family, and basically that's it, right? Single family in there. And community services in between. Okay. How about, and this whole area pretty much is in our Enduring Green Network? Okay. So like, I guess my next question is how dense, because I know that came up in one of our discussions on a different parcel, completely different project. But how dense would the houses be? I mean, you talking 3-acre lots, or are you talking packed in, or do you have any idea yet?
Well,
go ahead.
Neighborhood conservation enables, and maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, Andrew, but neighborhood conservation enables you to cluster the houses close together if you leave an area that's open. So instead of plopping one house in every acre lot, you can cluster them together and then leave several acres of green space that actually has some wildlife value.
Are we talking about neighborhood conservation or a conservation neighborhood? Aren't there two categories?
Yeah, I think there may
Okay.
be a little
Difference.
difference on, there's, the neighborhood conservation zoning under our zoning code is it's a high-density, single-family proposal. It allows for up to 10 units per acre. You could do under that what's called a conservation subdivision, which that's where what Alderman Marsh is talking about, where you could cluster the homes in one area and have conservation areas in another area. So that could be an option still under that if there are areas they wanted to preserve and build into.
But that's just an option.
That's
It's
right.
not- Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And that's where we were comfortable, where I was comfortable advocating that to Chambers, Bank, and Client in this instance. If you look right here, this is one of our streams that falls in our stream side ordinance protection. So I am 50 feet from top of bank. So I don't have anything that's really usable over here. But what I do have as a developer, and if I'm marketing this to residents, I have a private park-like setting. I have that area that is protected. There is a law of diminishing return in development, contrary to what some people would tell you. It doesn't benefit a developer. It wouldn't benefit me if I were spending my dollars out there to go in and try and do something here, because there's really nothing there to do anything with. So inherently, by the way we broke these up, understanding that these natural features are barriers, but are also elements that allow you in the future to create very habitable areas and things that are very desirable to folks.
And where will the ballparks and all that stuff, will they be down there in that,
Mhm.
down there, yeah, right, in that area? Or-
All of this good stuff right here,
Yeah,
along this area.
so that's where it more or less levels out somewhat.
It comes into here just a little bit, eats along into here. This is protected along here. You've got maintenance back here. You've got some proposed basketball courts and tennis courts. Soccer fields right here, which is city. We're getting ready to lose our lease with the university over in the Lewis Fields. And then a few baseball diamonds that'll be in these areas right in here. And then you'll have concessions, varying things. In the future, I believe the intent is where the parking area is, the trailhead,
Mhm.
will actually relocate and will be in this area right here. And this becomes what's been coined as a great lawn area
Okay.
towards the front right there.
I have a question. I was on that trail this weekend, and I noticed the property line indicators where you can see the white trail and then the green line touch. Could you comment any on that area? Because the first thing I thought when I saw those property lines is, what is the future of that area? Because it was right on the trail, and before I even gave this any thought, I didn't put them together, and was just curious what might be the expected use of that area, because it would be too bad if the trail was butted behind a new series of homes without any buffer at all. Is there any, can you comment at all on that area?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Staff came to me and said, hey, Hunter, we have a predicament right now. ADQ is in the middle of doing this remediation right here, and we've got heavy truck traffic. There's all kinds of stuff right here. What we would like to do, and it's twofold, we want to get folks out there using this, but also as a condition of the grant with the Walton Family Foundation, we need to be able to open this up and have this being used. Could we, on a temporary basis, cross your property down through here to not have it? We could run it up along the road, we could do all these things, but I mean, that's not a very enjoyable or a safe experience. So worked with staff and walked out, and I said, this is essentially a temporary portion right here, and that in the future we'll relocate along once work gets done.
Any other questions or concerns, thoughts?
Just out of curiosity, what's the status of all the property to the north? Multiple owners and stuff, or who owns that?
Well, there's one significant owner, that's Stan Johnson. He has approximately 300 acres to the north, and I don't see Stan doing anything with that outside of enjoying it. Himself, his mother, the family lives out there. They are avid mountain bikers, trail users, are a huge supporter of the Mount Kessler Reserve and promoting that. There is a portion of property along the north that's owned by another group, I believe it's Northern Properties Group LLC, not affiliated, don't know exactly anything they have going on with that. that you could pay Stan to do something with his property.
Just to get my bearings, so like, where is this in relationship to the smokehouse and stuff?
Okay, smokehouse is right here,
Okay.
and I come up, cruising on up. This is where you hit Frank's, where if anybody's been to a pizza cook or anything like that.
Yeah.
You would drive on up just about to right here, and you would enter into the trail that takes you into Rock City.
Okay.
Miss Steele has a large piece, or one of the connecting pieces of property up here that brings you over into this area. This is Walmart, this is Lowe's, and then you have Finger Road coming back. If any of you are familiar with the Deep Woods House, if you're not, check it out, it's a cool house. Jack Butt's brother owns it. He makes it available for rentals, but it's anyway, I'm digressing, but it's a very neat 60s, 70s Ozark vernacular house.
So the Rock City and all that stuff, is that Frank's property or who all owns?
That's Frank's property.
Okay.
That's on Frank's. And then while we're talking, if you move down in this way, you've got the Ozark Regional Land Trust, which actually has quite a bit of acreage over here. Hershey and Denise Garner have this piece of property. They've always been huge proponents of outdoors and philanthropy in the area. So the city has amassed a little bit over 600 acres. When you start looking at what Frank has done for years in allowing his easements and doing, and also Miss Steele and this access along with these different things, you start edging up on close to 1,000 acres of protected property that the owners are willing to allow public access. So it's pretty unheard of.
And does P1 include the regional park and Mount Kessler new area as well?
It does.
I didn't realize Rock City wasn't included in that.
Well, and that's one of the great things is where Frank's allowed access into his property. And that's when I first got to know Frank, I got to know him several years ago in looking at trying to secure this and do these different things. And when we were going along, he was very comfortable with allowing people to come up his road, which is essentially his driveway, and be able to utilize this. And at one point, I pointed out to Frank and said, I don't know if I can let you do this. You're going to destroy your front yard. I mean, I don't think you know quite how many people are going to be utilizing this. And so, but I was at his place recently, and he has been in the process of fixing up his smokehouse to be able to have educational programs, have school bus parking, have all kinds of. Frank's awesome.
All right. Is there any public comment?
Well, you know, personally, I know Hunter, I know what's going on, and I think it's great. And I think that area will need to be developed for usage of the regional park and the system on Mount Kessler. So, yeah, I think it'll fit into the style of the way people like to live in Fayetteville, for sure. So my personal opinion, I think it's a great idea. And I think that was also worked into the contract with the foundation, Walton Foundation, City, and Chambers Bank. You know, Chambers gave a lot, so hopefully we can give Chambers a little bit back to give them a little help. And I think that's what this is all about. It's a good deal.
All right. Any other comments? I mean, I was very concerned about this at first because it is going to drain into my backyard and into the whole Fayette Junction area, which is very flood prone. But you know, I think that it's a good use adjacent to our regional park. I just wanted to bring it to the committee because it is a large greenfield site in our Enduring Green Network, draining into an area with flooding issues, and so I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to weigh in. So, you know, do we have a recommendation to the council well, what are your thoughts?
The only thing I guess that bothers me, always, you know, 10 units per acre always scares me in the middle of our Enduring Green Network because you don't know how it's going to be done. And with privacy fences and all that, it's just, you know, I'm afraid it'll just, you know, chop that up. But depending on, like I said, how the lay of the land and stuff, you know, you may, like the whole creek area will still have to be, I guess, protected basically. And so that would be, you know, your corridor and stuff for wildlife and all that. So that makes me feel better.
And we also have all the parks corridor for wildlife
Right,
as well.
right,
the
right.
little Kessler.
Exactly. And
Presumably
Frank
it
and
serves
all that.
the developer to fit into that
Right.
plan. I mean, that's good
Right.
business on their part not to go and torque up everybody that's going to the park.
Right, right.
Any motions? Do we want to recommend to the council that they pass the rezone? Or, I mean, the other good thing is these are form-based zones, so that does mean that, the buildings have to face the street and be up next to the street. So I think that was an advantage.
What was that now?
The form-based codes. And Andrew, can you speak a little bit about the form-based codes?
Form-based zones are different than what we would call Euclidean-based zoning. It's not a typical suburban zoning district that you would see like out at a mall or just a commercial strip shopping center. Under these zoning districts, as Sarah was discussing, the buildings have to face the street in a traditional development pattern. Parking has to be shielded to the sides, to the rear of the buildings, and there's a higher architectural requirement as well under these codes. It's really what the city's decided to do with one of our main goals in our city plan is to require traditional development patterns, and so that's what this is in line with.
Form-based zonings are generally associated with promoting higher walkability, greater mixes of use, less separation of exclusive uses that would promote more of a need to drive between points. So they're definitely the direction we've been trying to move in terms of rezoning many areas of our community. So this zoning proposal certainly fits within that direction and trajectory for the city.
Can you name an area that's being developed that way?
Much of the Weddington corridor plan, the what we call the heart of the neighborhood, is in the process of being rezoned to all of these same zoning districts. Much of all of our other neighborhood plans, the Fayette Junction plan, much of the area along Razorback Road just to the north of here is one of a couple of different form-based zoning districts. Much of your neighborhood, Richard, is neighborhood conservation. It was rezoned to neighborhood conservation in 2008 and 9. So there's some pretty significant areas of Fayetteville, particularly where we've done our neighborhood master plans that have been rezoned to these types of form-based zoning districts.
Could you list the zones that are included under form-based?
Did I list them all?
Oh, there's lots and lots of them.
There's several.
Go.
Yeah. Many of them are exclusive to just the downtown core.
Well,
But these are the outside the downtown zoning districts, and I believe there's these three, and there's
There's one called
neighborhood services.
Yeah, neighborhood services.
That would kind of fit between neighborhood conservation and community services in terms of intensity of use.
Yeah, and all of our multifamily zoning districts are all form-based as well. So it's really been a big shift in the last 5 to 10 years, but we really haven't seen huge, vast areas of greenfield being developed under form-based zones. So like Peter mentioned, we've rezoned a lot of existing neighborhoods like Walker Park and downtown areas into form-based zones. But what we've done with these new zoning districts is try to mimic that development pattern and create codes where you can repeat that in other places, like at this spot.
I can give you one good example of a form-based development. On South School, there's it's either a Dollar General or a Dollar Tree along Dollar General. And if you'll notice, the building is up close to the street. The entrance is on the corner of the building, and the parking lot is to the side instead of out front between the street and the building. So that's an example of what you get when you switch to a form-based zoning district like this. That's either, I don't know if that's your urban thoroughfare or which one of the form-based districts they have, but it's one of them.
Mm-hmm. Like the Firestone out on Mission and Crossover, that's pretty new. That was also developed under community services. You can see the buildings closer to the street. The parking's kind of hidden back off of that side of the street.
There's an interesting aspect of that building is it has glass that is kind of like an entrance, but there's actually a brick wall behind it.
Yeah.
It's an interesting touch, but yeah, I get it what you're describing.
Where's Rupel Road in relationship to this, and that's kind of,
Rupel will come down right here. It actually lines right up with Smokehouse Trail in the future.
okay. So long-term, it'll be part of the city's transit.
Well,
kind of
it's a little south of
plan.
the box, but not too far. I mean, because I think MLK is supposed to be, is it MLK or 15th is supposed to be the south end of the box?
MLK, west of 540, or 49.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. So we're a little out, but there's going to be I think there's already going to be so much traffic generated out there because of the regional park in Kessler Mountain and its proximity to the bypass or I-49 or whatever we'll call it these
What's
days.
the vertical road that splits?
This
Yeah, right there.
Finger Road.
Finger Road?
Finger Road comes back this way, and you'll hit a wall right here of mailboxes that, in so many words, tell you do not go any further unless you're one of these people. And then this heads up to Stan's place up here.
And there's a little park in that area, isn't there? Or over there by Finger Road?
Top of the hill.
Yeah, there's a small city park.
Yeah.
Finger
Yeah.
Park.
It looked like there were about 3 streams in the development area.
Uh-huh.
Is that right? I mean, I guess our stream side protection ordinance would be in effect there, like everywhere.
And that's where we worked in setting the trails and doing those. We set the trail along that stream side ordinance area, in that, not in the first 25 feet, obviously, but in that second 25 feet, to be able to accommodate that.
So most of the traffic would be Cato Springs, and then what was the one you said?
Shiloh. Shiloh in the future, who knows when that will be, but coming down, but then coming off of Cato Springs and coming in the property will be the majority of the traffic
Is there any
generated.
major bridge needed for Shiloh?
But Shiloh will require a bridge in the future. And just, whether it's me or the city or who ends up doing the bridge, my philosophy on bridges is you span the floodway. You don't get into the floodway in one iota. It may cost you a little bit more, but it's so much easier. You make the Corps very happy. You don't get into any of your stream flow doing anything. Developments I've done in Rogers, Metro Park, where Horse Barn Trailhead is, in Rogers, that's my development there. I also did the one on the other side of the street, which is the farms. And those would be indicative of types of bridges and developments that I do. I'm not to say I'm going to get given the keys, although I'd love the keys to do this project.
Well, this would be an opportunity not to get within 50 feet of not to put the trail near the creek at all.
Well, and a lot of times, the individuals are doing the creeks or doing the trails want to have those in those areas near the creek. It's what I've experienced in the past. In Rogers and in different areas where there was easier routes to go through, whether it was following right along roads or in open areas, but the desire was to not locate them there. In some instances, they spent more money in where they place them inherently by the design that would have to be necessary to get those trails there.
When you have the opportunity to build a fresh bridge, it's the opportunity also to be inclusive of your trail and to avoid grade crossing.
Oh, yeah, in the future, they will, absolutely, the trails will follow along those areas. But where you're coming in now, along this trail will come, and until there's an extension made through here, the idea and the agreement with the city was until this ties into the overall trail system, this trail will go, it will follow up along Shiloh Road, and it would follow the bridge cross, I would imagine. Obviously, I don't speak for the city, but I couldn't imagine it not doing that.
Not to put you on the spot with promises or anything like that, but what could you anticipate for the rest of the development of the area in terms of walkability? We had talked a little bit about the ordinance, the zoning already, but in terms of overall vision of those areas, is there anything you can comment on how walkability would be considered?
When Sarah was out, I was visiting with her. I had a condo down on Dixon Street for a long time. And this little 600 square foot place is my favorite place. I park my car, I don't have to get back in it. I can go goof off, do whatever I want, don't drive all weekend, all week, whatever. In envisioning from a neighborhood perspective and identifying this as a place that I would want to live and would live, I don't want to drive. I don't want to have to do anything. So being able to go into the different types of mixed uses that you can have in these varying zoning areas and having it be form-based, that's right up my bailiwick. I want to be able to walk and goof off if I want to ride my bike to go down and get some groceries or go do something. If it's to go to a pharmacy and grab something. If it's to go pretty much do anything, that's the way I'd like to do it.
This will be tied into the city's trail network, probably within the next,
It's going to be quick.
3 years or
I
quicker than
bet it's
that?
quicker than that. You guys,
So?
the city just received, the last city council, it was an
Yeah.
$850,000 grant from the Walton Family Foundation to tie this into
Well, what we
Is
got,
that what E-Trail?
the 850 was the Soligi Loop, but then we got another 150 for the design of the Cato Springs Trail, which will connect to the park. So hopefully if they get that design this year and start acquiring land next year, maybe next year we might see a little construction start, but
For the Cato Springs Trail.
for the Cato Springs Trail.
tie into the park.
So-
So 2 to 3 years,
2
I
to
think.
3 years.
This will be fairly well tied into the trail network.
Well, I've despaired for years since we started building the trails, of trying to get them to stay away from the streams. Only cross the streams on the minimum width bridge. Don't red dirt the sorbent soil in the wetland along the streams. Leave the native trees and native vegetation. And of course, that doesn't happen. I mean, if you were a fishery biologist, you'd say, don't allow any extra sunshine on the stream. You want that shade in the summer. The life in the stream depends on the quality of and the temperature of the water. So if you intentionally make a place where people can look at the water in a big way for a long stretch, then you're reducing water quality. So there are all these different things that go into this. It's not just how much of chemicals go down in the siltation process. It's all the things about the life in the stream. But anyway, the thing that some of you might want to go before we get away from streams and this, go look at South School and see the trails going under there. And it's going to be built up high on the side away from the stream itself, but under the bridge. It'll be wider than the usual thing. And guess what? That whole bridge is underwater sometimes. Totally underwater at times. And with more development up toward Walmart or everything upstream, University campus, the chances of its being underwater are going to be more frequent. That means that anything you build under that bridge is going to slow runoff from upstream as far as your house possibly, but it'll certainly do it for a stretch. And we know we're getting bigger floods now more frequently, and they're unpredictable. So I would hope you would try to protect that 50 feet.
And that's one thing I was going to mention to you, Aubrey. Matt McAfee, we walked this entire thing. I flagged it with him, measured it out, did everything, and worked with him in taking in consideration significant trees in different canopy areas that it's more important not to take out this canopy than it is to save 10 feet of property. I mean, to me it is, and I get to make those calls when I'm out there for the bank. And we walked this entire area along here, and we were not inside the tree canopy. We were on the exterior of the tree canopy, but we were running along and adjacent to it. And the thought process was, it provides those opportunities while you're going along. That if you're on the trail and you want to take a break, you want to take a picnic, you're hot, you just want to chill out, you want to enjoy it, you're in that area to do that. So we really were sensitive in identifying how and where that was placed, and really taking that into consideration.
Thank you.
All right, any further comments? Do we want to do a motion to
I move we
recommend this?
support the rezoning ordinance before city council.
Okay.
Second.
Second. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hunter.
If you guys ever have any questions, comments, don't ever hesitate. Peter, Sarah, and anyone want to get in touch with me.
Okay. We have nothing else on our agenda. Do you have an announcement?
Well, just the botanical garden, I guess, just to kind of try to prep ourselves
Okay.
and to be aware. I guess I don't know. I know Phil Penny is probably better versed in this. Were you prepared to give us a little
Sure.
Give
debrief?
us a very short synopsis.
If you guys want
Yeah.
to hear it,
It's not really on our agenda.
I can give you 5 minutes, you can
Yeah,
have it.
5 minutes.
5 minutes is all I
Okay,
need.
are you guys okay with 5 minutes?
Yes.
5 minutes.
You may turn it into 20 minutes because you'll be very interested.
Well, we've been here an
So
hour
all
and
you
a half.
guys know
We
what
need to
wetlands
respect
are?
people's time.
All you guys know what
Yes.
wetlands are? I brought just a small deal about them, just so you could have them, and I outlined on the second page some stuff about wetlands and how they're regulated.
I'm prepared for someone that
And
doesn't
also, on the last page, you'll see a map of Botanical Gardens' proposal of where they want to put a trail system.
Need one more over here. Thank you.
Is everyone familiar with the Botanical Garden, where it's located? East end, Lake Fayetteville.
I also have some pictures of the area that we have the trail in right now that you can pass around and check out. Basically, everybody has one, everybody's good. Basically, what's happening is Botanical Gardens is going to put a proposal out to move our trail system, a trail system that's one of the most used trail systems in northwest Arkansas for pedestrians, for everyone. And right now, the trail system, we proposed to the city in 2009 that the trail needed to be moved up out of the wetland in a sustainable area. With this new proposal from Botanical Gardens, the trail system is going to be pushed further into the wetland, requiring us to, if you look on the last page,
Excuse me, when you say
us trail users, requiring trail users or trail people that build trail. I'm a president of the Ozark Off-Road Cyclists, and we had volunteered for the city to build this trail system. And as an environmental scientist, I'm concerned of putting a trail system in a wetland, further into a wetland, when we tried to get it out.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to.
Go ahead.
Real quickly now. As I understand it, all this is city property, even the Botanical Garden, right? They have a long-term lease, I think. Is that?
I'm not sure.
I think that's the
Yes.
deal.
My understanding, yeah, is it's
Yeah.
Lake Fayetteville is a very large land holding that the city
Yeah.
has.
So,
Botanical Garden has a lease
yeah.
and an option on, their lease is actually for more than what they use currently, and they're looking at expanding their
Right.
footprint of the space that they actually use over a number of years to expand their garden activities.
And so it's city property already, and it will stay city property, but, yeah, the use and the expansion is what's being proposed. And then I think the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board is in the loop and will be even more in the loop, I think, when they hear the proposal. So they, I guess you could say, have some ownership in the trails, and then the Ozark Off-Road Cyclists, which I want to disclose I'm a member of too, they actually help build the trails. They're in the, I guess you can, low impact development, but it's
Right.
like proper, building trails so that they drain properly, they don't, wash out.
We built Mount Kessler, we built
Yeah.
Lake Fayetteville, we've done all the trail systems pretty much in northwest Arkansas and never have asked for any money from anyone. Anyway, we're being put in a situation to where we're gonna have to build a bridge and span over a wetland. And we're trying to figure out how we can work with that. We don't have the money to do that, and we've done everything we can as far as trail work out there, and this is the last piece we have left. We were pretty much told to stop working because of Botanical Gardens plan. We tried to work with them on an area to put the trail. If you look at our map here, you can kind of see a red line, and that red line is where they have proposed the trail go to. And if you look at this green line, as an environmental scientist, the green line is where, without doing a jurisdictional determination through the Corps of Engineers, which needs to be done, that's where I would anticipate wet area. No jurisdictional determination has been asked for. The Corps of Engineers regulates that area. And I think it's important for you guys to think about how this proposal will work with that area.
When is this going before City Council?
August 4th?
It's going
Or no, it goes before the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board on August 4th.
On August 4th, it goes before Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where's the pressure coming from? What's the reason you're being asked to move? Are they building something else out there?
Yeah, they've got a multi-million-dollar expansion in the
They're going
works.
to build another pavilion of some kind
A
and
lot more than that, yeah.
roads and parking to it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I believe they have, my understanding is they have a multi-year plan
Yeah,
for
it's a long-term,
expanding
yeah.
the botanical garden. It's not all going to happen at once, but they're wanting to
But
get
there will
this.
still be some garden somewhere out there.
Oh, yeah, no, it'll be more, yeah, it'll be more gardens and, yeah. It's just a lot more, I think.
Arboretums and
What, growing towards 2028? Okay, so, yeah.
I think I sent a link. I thought I copied everybody. So I think one of my
I just
emails.
want
No, any
establish
questions? I'm just,
a sense of what is the pressure to ask for the trail to be moved, because it seemed like the trail, was it there first?
yes.
And was it built in a logical way to serve the users?
Yes.
Sensible, low impact, yeah.
Yes.
All the things that anybody who goes to the trouble to go through the cane breaks and the poison ivy patches and the greenbrier to establish a nice riding trail.
Yes, sir.
They would have worked through all of those compromises and established something. I was just wondering. Probably
Yes, sir.
needed to be said.
So Phil, if I understand this, the green is, that's like, is that the 1240 contour?
That's a 1240 contour.
Down here, okay.
And as an environmental scientist, I would anticipate below the 1240 contours is where you would start seeing wetland indicators, such as, and if you look at this stuff, it talks about plants, hydrology, and soils.
You think, is that naturally occurring wetland, or is that a wetland as a result of the impoundment of Lake Fayetteville? Like, would that wetland be there if the lake weren't there?
No.
Okay.
But once a wetland is established, it is a regulated area.
Okay.
And the 1240 line is a line that I would anticipate just because of the water, the level of the dam, and the amount of flooding that would occur there, and the saturation that would sit at that point.
Sure.
But until there's a jurisdictional determination, no one's going to know. And so it's just kind of, they need a jurisdictional determination to determine if this is a wet area, what you're impacting, and if you are, what are the functions and values of that, which is part of what you would need to do with the Corps of Engineers, and it's part of the Clean Water Act.
What's the OORC proposed trail?
Our proposed trail is the dotted line there.
But what are y'all, so y'all are actually proposing to move the trail out of what the current wetland?
So in 2009, that was where we proposed the trail, and we've got it marked out there. But, you know, we're willing to work with anyone. However, if we do go into where this new red line is, it's going to mean that there's going to be a new bridge put over a stream, which we need to stay out of the ordinary high water mark. It's going to mean that we're going to shade probably wetland because we're probably going to need to boardwalk it. It's going to mean cost of $100,000 to $200,000 for a nonprofit organization that's never asked for a dime. And
Or the city parks trails system's gonna have to step up. I mean, this would be.
this is our botanical garden. This is what we ride through every day, and no one built it. It's nature.
So the proposed trail, is that a separate matter, or is it incorporating the proposed botanical gardens? So would you propose this trail whether they did the expansion or not, or is it in response to?
That was before.
It was prior to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the city trails coordinator and that whole group, they've seen ORC's proposed trail back in the
Yes.
past?
Yes.
And it's an addition, just getting oriented.
Sure,
In an
no
addition
problem.
to the existing nature trail or replacement?
It was gonna be a replacement trail to get up out of the wetlands, so we would not impact that area.
Okay.
Is it in
Yes, sir.
conflict with planned buildings and parking lots and whatever?
It is in conflict with planned buildings and parking lots at Botanical Garden.
Didn't decide to go out there and ride through the parking lot, right? You wanted to ride
I
through-
see.
So we wanted to get out of that section.
Because
It wasn't your intention to,
Richard, can you
Writing-
be cautious of speaking?
okay,
for
it
people?
wasn't your intention to be riding through a parking lot as part of your nature experience out there.
Right.
That didn't seem like that would be part of our botanical experience.
If I'm reading the map right, their planned construction, if the trail stayed where it is right now, would that not, they wouldn't have to move the trail at all?
Say that again.
Say, if the trail wasn't moved at all,
Right,
it wouldn't affect their construction at all?
No, it would.
it would.
That's why they want
Yes,
it moved.
they want it moved.
If I understood, okay.
So the existing trail and the old proposed trail, neither one match with their plan?
Because
Okay.
they want to put in more parking, they want to
Yeah.
expand, they want to build an arboretum. Yeah.
Now, does the Botanical Gardens just not want there to be a trail in that area? I'm confused. Not the newly proposed.
You know,
or
I
the
think
old?
I think that the Botanical Gardens does not want a trail where it is now. They want to push it towards the lake to complete their development.
Okay. Can I ask a question? Like, okay, so the dotted proposed trail was one that was proposed by ORC.
Correct.
How long
So
ago-
how come that trail wasn't the original trail versus the one that's?
The original trail was built in before my time.
Oh, okay.
And we, as the ORC, went to the city and said, this area has a lot of fall line trail and a lot of trail that's in wetlands.
Okay.
And we went back and realigned the trail system to not have erosion or sediment loads that would go into the lake. And so as we did that, we worked around the lake, and once we got to Botanical Gardens, we were told to stop.
Okay. But either one of these trails is in the way of their intentions?
Yeah, the current yellow trail is in the way of what they want.
Yes.
But the dotted red line trail would be.
Would be
as
Is
well.
in way also, so, right.
All right, well, we have given this 10 minutes.
Okay.
It wasn't on our agenda, and so
All right.
as a courtesy to any public members that would care to weigh in on this, I think we need to stop the discussion now. But I
Sure.
think we've got some good background information. The meeting is going to be on August 4th at 5:30 in room 111.
That's the Parks and
That's
Recreation.
the Parks and Rec
Parks and
meeting we
Recreation.
discussed.
Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
Advisory Board.
And I would be
Actually
happy
heard
to
it
come back or
before.
discuss anything later with any of you guys.
Okay.
And it would have to go before, it'd go through that to city council.
Yeah, it's not on our agenda.
They are an advisory committee similar to you all that makes
But it will-
recommendations to the council related to parkland. So because this is in parkland, within a parkland, that's why proposal's going to the Parks and Rec Advisory Board.
So can we also get it on our agenda for next month, or will it have already gone to council by then?
I do not know what the planned date for council is.
Well, if it comes up before then, I could request that we hold it on the first reading until we have an opportunity to
I
weigh in.
think that it's certainly an option. We would need to, I think, have a well-rounded conversation, to have someone from the Botanical Garden
Mhm.
Absolutely.
here, if they're willing to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
I've got a related question, or maybe a tangent, but, you know, our scope to review and offer, you know, our 2 cents to the city council on environmental matters. Now, things like the city trails program, you know, Aubrey's had some heartburn about where they put trails and so on and so forth over the years, and now, you know, this is something that's coming up. Is there a mechanism, because, I mean, those aren't ordinances before the city council, those are matters of the Parks Board, I guess. Is there any mechanism for us to weigh in on some of that stuff and you know, talk about, you know, keeping stuff out of, you know, 50 foot from a creek or whatever, then talk about the shading, talk about the sediment
absolutely
load?
add that to our agenda. No, that was not on our priority list for this year, and we still have a lot of incomplete items on that priority list. So I think that's something we would need to evaluate if we wanted to take on such a large project. But, you know, this is something that's timely. It affects stormwater quality. I think that if they were willing to, you know, let's get the botanical garden out here, the cyclists, and have a discussion about it, I think that would be perfect.
Well, it's got one more thing to add. If we do build a trail for the users, the multi-use trail, if we put it in an area for the ORC to do it, we're probably gonna ask for a jurisdictional determination on that area. And we're probably gonna have to do a functions and values evaluation. And that may open the lake up to the Corps to look at all of the projects going on.
If I may, the city has not required jurisdictional
Determinations
decisions on any land for maybe 10 years. I know 7 or 8.
They don't want to.
And there's a reason. They're just allowing it, you know, they're ignoring it. And anybody like you guys would know it's average person.
As an environmental scientist, I can't, it would be against my integrity to move forth without that.
All right, well, so I understand that, is it clear that we want this on our next agenda? Okay. And in the interim, try to make that meeting. If you can't, you can always view that on our Granicus afterwards.
I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen.
Just a quick related matter, this Thursday, the Arctic, Alaska Arctic Refuge, Wildlife Refuge will be the subject on Thursday at 7 p.m. It's a Sierra-sponsored event, and we'll have a guy who goes there every year and is a trail leader and so forth. He teaches at the university, and it's at the Extension Center.
And I'll shoot you guys an email so you can have mine if you want to communicate back and forth.
Excellent. Any other announcements?
One other thing I have, I did get the final version of the recycling flyer to go with the events permit completed, or I didn't get it completed, but Recycling and Trash got that completed, and working on getting that uploaded to the website in the 3 different locations on the Recycling and Trash website and on the events permit website, and as part of the events permit application that's one would download as well.
Great.
Thank you all for your support and input on that, and almost got that done.
All right.
Just wanted to update you all.
If there's nothing else, we're adjourned. Thank you.